1. Max Payne 3. The third-person shooter franchise started out with a slow-motion bang and only got better as Rockstar acquired the IP from Remedy with its sequel, and ultimately we ended up with what I would contend is the finest game in the series with Max Payne 3. The impactful shooting and revolutionary bullet time mechanics that you would expect are all here, although with more flexibility than ever. Max can leap out from behind cover, take out 3 or 4 bad guys, and safely dart behind new cover, all in one fluid Matrix-esque series of movements that still feels great to execute today. The story is also strong, with Max feeling like his life is largely meaningless with the events of the previous 2 games wrapping up his initial story arc. However, he does find meaning once again as a bodyguard for the rich and powerful in South America. But as usual, despite getting in way over his head, Max Payne finds himself being a formidable foe to the crime syndicates that cross his path. It's a truly classic game, and I'm hard-pressed to think of very many third-person shooters that have eclipsed it, even today. 2. Killzone 2. Killzone 2 and 3 are far cries from the original game. They are extremely well-made, fun first-person shooters in a unique world that feels all its own. Ideally, you should really end up with both games on the PS3, but if you had to pick one, I'd say go with 2. It's got all of the Killzone-isms that you would expect, with a few surprises here and there. While the main characters definitely could have been a little more interesting, it's a great showcase for what the PS3 can do and a fun romp nonetheless. 3. Resistance 3. Much like Killzone, I'd highly recommend grabbing all of the Resistance games on the PS3, but if I had to pick one game to represent the series as its finest outing, I think 3 is probably the best choice. Bringing back health packs in an era of rampant automatically regenerating health for shooters is not the only trick up its sleeves. It's got a fantastic story that dives deeper into the personal struggles of its characters than its predecessors, as well as that reliably charming and compelling selection of weapons and gadgets that Insomniac games are so well known for. Put all of that together in one of the genre's most fascinating worlds, and you get one of the PS3's finest games. 4. Puppeteer. If you like your platformers pleasant and charismatic, then look no further than Puppeteer. The game is of course criminally underrated today, as it easily still stands as one of the best examples of its genre of the last decade or so. The entire thing is presented to you like a cute community theater play, but still effectively controls like a platformer. Little Big Planet fans will feel right at home with the somewhat floatier gameplay. But rest assured, it's still very much its own thing. With the direction Sony's first and second-party projects are seemingly going, this sort of thing will probably be sadly and increasingly rarer, so all the more reason to grab a digital copy of this game now before it's too late. 5. The Ico and Shadow of the Colossus collection, specifically for the Ico HD game. While you can and should be getting the Shadow of the Colossus remake from Bluepoint Games if you're interested in that game, Ico is sort of its little brother that you might have missed. It's got a similar look and setting, and even the same vague style of storytelling. Yet, it still feels unique at the same time. 6. Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots. What can be said about Metal Gear Solid 4 that hasn't been said 1,000 times? It's Metal Gear Solid at its finest in almost every way. While I would concede the boss battles, while still fun, are perhaps its weakest point, every other element of the game, including its story, writing, and depth of gameplay, can only be described as Metal Gear Solid perfection. It's my and many others' personal favorite of the series, yet still has not seen a release on anything but the PS3. As such, it's highly important to pick this game up soon if you haven't already. Point of interest, you can buy Metal Gear Solid 4 on its own or as part of the Metal Gear Solid Legacy Collection, which has every Metal Gear game, including the 8-bit originals, all the way up to 4. I think that is probably the better way to go, but either way, Metal Gear Solid 4 is a must-own. 7. MotorStorm Pacific Rift. Thankfully, we are seeing the arcadey style of racing games coming back into style, but few of the genre's newer games can hold much of a candle to MotorStorm. Whether you're playing Arctic Edge, Apocalypse, or the original from 2006, you can't really go wrong with the series. I think Pacific Rift is probably the best example of the series all around, but again, the physics-based chaotic racing of any of these games will always be a fun ride. Grab them all if you can. 8. Infamous 2. Infamous 2 took what Infamous did and ratcheted up all of its best elements while smoothing out its few rough edges. As a result, this is probably the best game in the series overall, and a classic open-world action game in its own right. Using the electricity of the city to propel you around in it is nothing short of enthralling. The combat is great, and the story is a nice twist to the superhero format that you rarely see. 9. Red Dead Redemption. For obvious reasons, Red Dead Redemption is a game that must be owned by anyone that enjoyed Revolver or Redemption 2. No series has really done the Western setting as well as these have. And for that reason alone, it certainly deserves a spot on your shelf and/or on your PS3's hard drive. It's a classic Rockstar game and even has a pretty good zombie expansion that's also worth checking out. 10. Ratchet & Clank Future: Tools of Destruction. The beginning of Ratchet & Clank's Future saga is arguably the best part of the series, which is saying a lot, seeing as how Insomniac was cranking out a Ratchet game every couple of years back then, and they were all good. Tools of Destruction is the game that brought the series to the PS3, and it does a great job of giving fans the fun puzzles, the spectacular action, and charming wit that they expect from the series here, and all of those elements are at full blast in this game. Like with the other franchises that saw multiple entries on the PS3, it's hard to go wrong with any of them, but I would definitely start with Tools of Destruction if you're new to the franchise, as it really nails everything. 11. Uncharted 2: Among Thieves. Uncharted 2 is widely considered to be the best in the series. It was a huge step up from the first game in basically every way, and launched Naughty Dog to the pinnacle of popularity that they still maintain to this day. The gameplay could be considered a little shallow, as there are no upgrades for Drake or any of his weapons or abilities, and pretty limited explorability, but that also just keeps you focused on the cinematic action and the story, which have always been the strongest two elements of Naughty Dog games in general. 12. Grand Theft Auto 5. GTA 5 might not dethrone San Andreas or Vice City in some gamers' minds, but in terms of scale and variety, it beats every other GTA game like a drum. Even today, almost 10 years after its launch, it's still perhaps the most fulfilling open-world game you can play, with countless different narrative and gameplay paths to explore, and that's not even counting the online stuff, which is a whole other can of worms as well. Considering that the game has superior versions on the PS4, Xbox One, PC, and current-gen consoles soon, there might not be a whole lot of reason to pick up the PS3 version, but it should still be remembered as one of the better games for the system. 13. God of War 3. While the newest entry in the God of War franchise leaves the arcadey action and ridiculously angry Kratos behind for a more nuanced take, God of War 3 perfected those elements, and as a result, is still an incredible game to play. The sheer amount of rage and violence on display for nearly every moment of the game is a sight to behold. Again, there is a superior version of this on the PS4, but if you want that authentic PS3 God of War experience, nobody can blame you for picking this one up. 14. Batman Arkham City. The Batman Arkham series has delivered a pretty solid lineage of games. People may like some entries better than others, but most agree that Arkham City is the best in terms of its story and variety of missions, and it's easy to see why. Being freed from Arkham Asylum itself and actually zipping around the rooftops of Gotham City has never really been done like this before Arkham City, and it's a true classic. 15. The Last of Us. The Last of Us is a legendary game, to put it lightly. It's one of the highest grossing games in PlayStation's history, and what many would call one of the best games of all time. The story of Joel and Ellie going from not really liking each other to basically being father and daughter is genuinely endearing, and contrasts well with the decaying post-apocalyptic world that they're constantly fighting against. To not know about this game at this point seems fairly unlikely, but if for some reason you haven't played it, the PS3 version is a great and very cost-effective place to start.